Greetings. Should be live here any second now. Hold on a second. The time is now. Okay, it's working. We're good. What's happening, everybody? What's up, Zaxius, Nosh, Rules, Anti-Solar Flare, Polaroid, everybody? We're going to do golden garlic soup today. I'm excited for this, one of my favorite soups to make. I have a couple different variations of it I will talk about. What's up, Jagger? You woke up early for this. Nice. We're cooking some nice, simple soup. I love soups like this. Just really simple ingredients, executed well. The premise for this soup is getting a perfect golden brown on the garlic when you saute it. If you don't nail the golden garlic, the soup falls flat. You can do this soup with roux, you can do it with cream as well, but for this case I'm doing a nice healthy soup. It's going to be thickened with yellow potatoes rather than using a roux. Roux is amazing, cream is amazing, but you don't always need it to make good food. Working in kitchens, I've used a lot of heavy cream and roux, and I've always tried to avoid doing that in my own home cooking. Cooking good food that's really bad for you is very easy. Cooking good food that is healthy for you is much harder. So we're going to talk about some simple flavor profiles and go from there. So garlic's good. We love garlic. I can literally make anything with a ton of garlic, and I'll never say, man, that is just too much garlic. It's always just enough. So we got this lovely elephant garlic here. I love elephant garlic because it has a much milder acidity than regular garlic. Okay, let me talk about potatoes real quick. Yes, but butter is amazing. I know it's really good. I know it's good. Normally I would tell you never to put potatoes in hot water when you cook them. I'm doing this for time purposes and also because these potatoes are going to be basically emulsified into the soup. If you're ever going to cook potatoes by themselves and you want them to have texture, you always start with cold water and then bring it to a boil from there. But for this case, to save time, so I don't want to wait 40 minutes for water to boil and the potatoes to cook, we have hot water on the stove already. Alright, so washed all this stuff beforehand. Let's get these peeled up. So we're going to be adding carrots, celery, red onion, potatoes, thyme, chicken stock, and loads of garlic. Now I gotta be nervous because Jager's here and he works in a Michelin star restaurant. Realistically, I know how to cook a lot of very fancy stuff, but cooking at home, you don't usually go out and spend that much money on food, and simple food's where it's at for me. I very rarely do complex things when I cook for myself. Save that for eating out or very special occasions. Here's a question, Jager. What do you eat when you're at home, since you cook in a kitchen all day? I'm sure you cook for yourself a lot, but like, most of the cooks I know cook pretty simple stuff for themselves and then eat the fancy stuff while they're at the kitchen. What's up, GQ? Good to see you, man. Alright. Simple food, I barbecue a lot. There you go. I make a lot of soups and rice dishes. Love to barbecue too. Alright. Okay, these are the potatoes that we're going to use for the emulsification, and the other potatoes are going to get diced super thin and added to the soup last minute so they still have a little bit of texture. It's been a minute since I peeled potatoes. They don't have to be perfectly skinless or anything. It's not gonna hurt anything. But so how is everybody doing today? After the cast, or after this portion of the cast, I'm going to be doing Super Meat Boy any percent. Going to start learning that and cutting down my time. I watched EXO's world record attempt 3 or 4 times in the past 2 days. Pretty amazing stuff. I need to get it down to about 20 minutes. The best part of peeling is having somebody else do it for you. I've peeled many vegetables. If I was working in a kitchen, I'd have to do this much faster, but I don't. So the one nice thing about cooking at home, you can kind of take your time. Granted, I'm on somewhat of a time limit for this segment, but I know we're going to make it just fine. Nice shaker. Okay, so once again, potatoes. Only for this purpose am I ever going to put potatoes in hot water to start cooking them. Any other time you cook a potato, you want to put it in cold water to start with and bring it to a boil from there. The reason for this is if you put regular potatoes into boiling water, the starch on the outside breaks down much faster than the starch on the inside, and you end up with weird texture potatoes. They're not firm. They might be firm in the middle and super mushy on the outside, which is exactly what you don't want. Oh yeah, that one cooking with Frag where I cut my finger wide open. That was on some red potatoes for stew. I still have a scar from that. Probably always will. We are using Yukon Gold or yellow potatoes. There's many variations of them. They have a different moisture content than red potatoes or russets. I find them to be a very nice texture once they're emulsified into liquid, whereas red potatoes tend to be a lot more chunky, and russets are just too thin to do anything. Too fluffy. Okay. Let me grab a towel here. Okay, hear my water bubbling. That's good. Let's get these chopped up in the water. Oh, knife. So I'm going to cut these into kind of, I don't know, large dice-ish cubes. So once again, I want them to be pretty much broken down to starch. The actual potato texture is going to come from the raw potatoes we'll throw in at the end. The premise of this soup is keeping the vegetables a decent texture, so we add them closer to the end when it's simmering. That way the carrots don't become mushy and the celery and the potatoes still have a little bit of bite to them. So you're getting multiple textures when you take a spoonful of the soup. So end up with a really rich garlic flavor followed by a little savory chicken stock and then the texture of the vegetables. Of course have a little bit of flavor themselves. Welcome to Dapper. I totally missed who it was. I can't really see the chat that well from here, but thank you very much. I wonder if I'm even going to need this many potatoes, because we'll find out. Okay, so the things you can do to make this soup taste even better and worse for you is by adding roux and or cream. Okay, that's good. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a soup. That's pretty much it. Alright, potato starch is pretty messy. Anytime you cut potatoes with your knife or do anything with potatoes, make sure you grab a wet rag and wipe down your stuff. Starch becomes very sticky. It can cause lots of accidents with your knife or the cutting board. Also, it turns brown pretty quick, which is not something you want in your food. It does not taste any different, but oxidation looks ugly. Okay. So we're going to cut the garlic up and then go from there. I want to get the garlic browning, and then we'll worry about the other vegetables later since they're going to be added towards the end anyways. Uh, Elephant garlic's great because it's really easy to peel too. All you do is cut off the ends and it pretty much peels itself. Whereas smaller garlic, you have to sit there and pick the peels off or smash the cloves. In this case, we don't want smashed cloves because we need slightly bigger chunks for the browning process. Garlic is extremely sticky, especially when it starts to cook. So if you have tons of really finely diced garlic, it's basically going to turn into a clump, which is very hard to brown. So for this, we're going to be going for more like cubes or slivers, whatever's closest. From the finest elephants, yes. It is a great time saver in that regard. Oh, balls. Where's my steel? That ain't it. There it is. If you steal your knife after every couple tasks, it will stay sharp for so much longer. Okay. Cut this nasty piece off. We'll cut this like we're going to cut an onion. I mean, you can really just dice it, but we'll cut it down this way and then make some cubes out of it. Don't cut all, I'm not cutting all the way through. If you cut all the way through, the stacks fall apart and then you have bad times. You really want to cut about 90% of the way through. Takes a little bit of practice, but same premise as doing an onion. Now, the garlic's going to cook down and be golden, then it's going to become kind of mushy. So I'm going to end up mashing this with a potato masher. Ideally, you'd have an immersion blender, which is a stick blender or hand blender, which 99% of people are not going to have in their kitchen, which is why I'm going to use a potato masher. I would use my stick blender otherwise. The right end? No. Garlic's another thing you never want to leave on your knife for very long. Garlic is very acidic and will eat your blade, depending on what your blade's made out of. Either way, it's never good to leave food on your knife, period. Okay, so we got a pretty large dice on the garlic. Obviously, you would not want to eat a piece this large by itself in food. It'd be very potent. I would enjoy it, but most people would not. Alright, so we're going to get this garlic in some oil. Get some oil heating up, actually. It's important that your temperature is correct on your oil, or at least enough to get it bubbling when you put the garlic in. If you start it on low temperature and then try to heat it up from there, you're going to have bad time because your garlic's going to turn mushy right away. Alright, so I'm going to put this on about a medium heat. I used about, I don't know, maybe a tablespoon, bit more of oil, enough to coat the bottom of the pan. And this is actually all the fat that will be added to the entire soup. What's up, failure comes first? Welcome, sir. Okay, so we got this all the way blasted. Give that a quick stir. I am using extra virgin olive oil for this. Vegetable and canola oil would work just fine. You can also do this soup very effectively with vegetable stock. It can be very easily be a vegan soup and be very tasty. I've done it both ways. God, where are my spoons? Alright, we'll use a wood spoon then. Don't need to stir the potatoes very much, but I want to make sure the water gets in between them. Alright. Little roll around. Alright, so olive oil has a lower burning temperature than most oils, about 450 Fahrenheit. If you reach a temperature of higher than 450 Fahrenheit, it's not going to go on fire, but it becomes rancid in the pot, and it has this bitter flavor. So you want to avoid ever getting it that hot. Well, let's clean off our knife like we talked about. Where's the wet end? Taking care of your knives is a really big deal. If you want to cook a lot, never put your knife in the dishwasher. Always hand wash it. Take care of your knife. It's the most important piece of cooking equipment you have. More important than pans and pots or anything else, the knife saves you all the time, makes your job incredibly easy. Alright, so I can see the oil is very liquidy now. Much more so it should be just about ready. Alright, so we're going to add this garlic in. The nice sizzle. Give it a quick stir just to get it coated in the garlic, and then we're going to let it brown on the one side before we stir again. One of the hardest things to execute in cooking, I don't know what all my regular spoons are, execute in cooking is properly browning, and the reason for that is you always want to stir stuff before you need to. So we want to make sure there's a decent brown on one side before we even bother to try to flip it. Feel the sizzle. All right, I'm going to be careful with this. There's a very fine line with garlic, browning garlic. It goes from brown to burnt very quick. So you have to nail the browning portion. Otherwise, you're going to have a bitter tasting soup. Not necessarily bad. And there will be a bitter undertone in it if you don't execute the garlic properly. It's the same thing with the olive oil. It's very temperamental as far as temperatures go. Oh, yes. So I have it on a medium-high heat. I'm trying to keep it right at medium-high because I don't want that 450 mark to hit and the olive oil to burn. If you've ever tasted burnt garlic, it's a very specific taste. It will not destroy, but you will taste it in everything you do after that point. You will taste it for sure. All right. It's getting there. We're getting a little bit of browning on the one side, which is good. Just a little bit, though. It is very bitter, yes. I have had smoked garlic. It's amazing. We actually used smoked garlic for some special recipe we did when I worked at the Golf and Country Club. It was one of the specials. So we used to smoke a lot of stuff there. It is actually pretty horrible, but it can be masked by other stuff, just not as easily. Okay, got a little bit of browning going on. And now is where the garlic starts to clump up. And now it's more important that we stir it a bit more often. Make sure all that crap doesn't stick on the bottom of the pan. Get it recoated in the oil. Now I'm going to turn the temperature down to about medium, because I don't want it to brown super fast. But you can see, hopefully you can see, the color on the edge of the spoon. That's the color you're looking for the browning. That nice golden brown. We're getting golden garlic soup, killer quack. Yeah, if only there was smell-o-vision, you guys could smell this amazing garlic. Roasted garlic is amazing. It's basically the same concept. You want the same color as roasted garlic, that nice golden brown. Alright, so we're going to stir it a little more often now to keep it from sticking to the pan and burning. You can see, hopefully, with stirring in here, how it's kind of clumping up together. It's becoming much more sticky. We're starting to get a nice golden brown color on the outside. Smell-o-vision needs to be a thing in the next 10 years. I agree. There are many variations of garlic out there. I really like purple garlic a lot. Very purple on the outside. Stud veal sweetbread. I haven't had a good sweetbread since shortly after leaving culinary school. That thymus gland. Okay, we're getting there. It's Kind of keep breaking it up and making sure the edges are moving around. We're starting to get a nice, nice golden color on there. Close. You'll be able to smell when it burns. Same with olive oil. You can smell when it's gotten too hot. Well, honestly, it depends on the variation of garlic. Elephant garlic is considered more mild, but you could just get a nuclear piece of garlic. So, yeah, purple garlic is intended not to be as harsh, but I mean, it depends on the clove as well. It could be. It's just normally not. Okay, we're almost there. Let's pull a piece out so you can see here. Let's see. Whoop. There you go. I can't remember the site I ordered my cutting board off, but it's a custom cutting board. They'll cut them any size and shape and color that you want. Real close, real close. Yep, golden brown's what you want. You don't want any dark brown. Okay. Got about 20 more seconds, and I'm just going to go ahead and add the stock and let the garlic start permeating through there. Right on, Jager. Well, I'm glad it's interesting to you. This is just something I've cooked for myself a lot at home. This is one of my own recipes. I've definitely done it for soups and kitchens and stuff. I used to do soup of the day for the last job I worked at 3 days out of the week. But once again, you have to get the golden brown on the garlic. If you don't get the golden brown on the garlic, you're going to have a really bad time. If you were like, Jager, if you're going to do this for, like, if you were doing this in an actual kitchen, or if I was, it would be finished with, like, a ½ pound of roux and a splash of heavy cream to smooth it out. But for home cooking, I can't justify using that much heavy cream and butter. So believe it or not, it's hard to maintain your weight when you sit at a computer for 6 or 7 hours a day. Okay, so now we're going to turn it up a little bit, bring it to a simmer. You want it to simmer for about 5 or 6 minutes just to break down the garlic, so when you do add the potatoes and then mash them, because we're not using an immersion blender, it will actually break apart. The best thing you can have here is an immersion blender, which is just a stick that you put in there and it just emulsifies the crap out of everything. Same with chicken fried steak. Oh god, I love chicken fried steak. So good. That's totally an American thing. That's one of the worst things I'll cook for myself, though. All right. I'm just gonna taste the broth real quick, knowing it's gonna get a lot more garlicky. I'm not sure how much sodium is in this chicken stock, so get a base for the salt level. See how much salt I want to end up adding. Yeah, it's pretty salty already, so we'll go from there after we add everything. Alright, now we're going to start chopping veggies. We'll chop the potatoes right at the end because we don't want them to oxidize. Cut off these little ends. The ends here. I'm going to fine dice pretty much everything. The thing with soups is it's all about texture. What does a spoonful equal? How many different textures you're going to get in your mouth? It really goes a long way. If you only have one note of texture in the entire soup, it's very hard. I find it very hard to eat. Make that a flat end. Obviously, I'm cooking at home. You know, the dice and stuff's not as important. If I was going to do this in the kitchen, I would make sure there was just an immaculate brunoise or really small dice on the carrots. For this purpose, though, not so much. Okay, so we cut a flat end off. The reason I do this to start with is now they lay flat and they won't roll around when I'm trying to cut them. Of course, it starts rolling around when I try to cut it. Okay, there we go. That was a horrible cut. totally sideways. Okay. We'll do those 2 at a time. When you end up squaring off carrots, you have a lot of waste involved, which is not something I like to do in home cooking. But when you're sitting in front of a 50-pound bag of carrots, it's not as big of a deal. One thing I always advise people to do, if you're going to cut a lot of stuff the same way, make sure you do one process at a time. So I'm going to get them all stacked right now, rather than doing each individual carrot. It takes about probably a third longer if you do it the other way. So now we're going to cut everything into strips, and then we'll cut everything into cubes. Should be going left to right here as well. If you're right-handed, everything you cut will end up on the right side of your knife, so it's much easier to work from left to right than it is right to left. There's my one really bad cut, so we'll do this in 2 parts. Honestly, my knife skills have deteriorated a lot. It's easy to keep on your knife skills when you're cutting stuff every single day. I don't do near as much cutting as I used to. Alright. Yeah, we'll go ahead and use that. Why not? Alright, once again, move everything to the left. And I'm probably just in like 3 or 4 sections. Yeah, you could bunch this all up and cut it at once, but you're going to have inconsistent cuts because your hand can't keep this in a clump properly. So you want to find a good amount, a good stack where you can actually hold it and keep everything clumped together with your hand. Four it is. All right, carrots. Alright, let's take a peek here. We're almost at a simmer. The water's moving around. It's great. Potatoes are boiling. Let's take a peek at these potatoes. Want these to be pretty soft, not like you'd be cooking them to eat them. You want to break down the starch as much as possible without them falling apart, is basically what you're trying to do. Close. About a minute. Yeah, we're just going to make them into a mountain sculpture. This is some especially dirty celery. I cleaned the crap out of it. It's still really dirty. Well, of course, it's a root vegetable, so what do you expect? Alright, you can dice celery a couple ways. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut these on a bias. So we have another texture. We kind of have cubes here. Kind of cubes, since we didn't square them off perfectly. So what I'm going to do here is cut these stalks in half. If you're going to end up straight dicing celery, cutting them in half is the best way to go, because then you end up with a flat piece that you can turn into a cube from there. We're not actually going to cube these, but trying to dice celery by cutting down the edge and then rolling it is extremely difficult to do. we're going to cut these on a pretty severe bias. So we're going to tilt our knife this way. I'm also going to tilt my knife down this way so we get an additional type of cut on there. So then we end up with pieces like that. Yeah, the sound of slicing celery is pretty awesome. Very crunchy. Now once again, the way to get the most consistent cuts is to do less at a time. Doing 2 at a time this time. If I did 1 at a time, they'd be immaculate. I ain't got time for that. Alright, these are kind of weird pieces, so I'll do these one individually. If you're going to go with simple food, the more texture you can provide in whatever you're making, the better off you're going to be. You're going for the base flavor and then texture. Texture is a big thing in food, as is smell, of course. But texture is big. Okay. Celery. Alright, we're at a nice simmer now. I'm going to give it a taste. See where the garlic flavor ended up being, how mushy the garlic is. So we're going to get a piece of garlic here too. Come on, there we go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's good. Alright, these potatoes got to be done, so we're just going to strain these into a colander. And actually going to rinse them off with a little bit of water. The purpose of doing this is to remove the extra starch on the outside and leave just the potato starch from the actual potatoes. The stuff that cooks off on the potatoes is a bunch of starch in the water, so it's kind of, I don't know, it can end up being kind of gritty. Alright, turn this down a smidge. The flavor itself of the broth is very potent right now, so I might end up thinning it out with a little bit of water. And I also don't think I'm going to need all these potatoes, but we'll see. Okay. God bless, that smells amazing. Okay, we'll add about half these. Let's see where it ends up. So now we're going to take our lovely potato masher. Once again, if you had a immersion blender, this would be the way to go. We're actually going to mash this up. What we'll end up doing is actually thickening the water with the starch from the potatoes. I mean, you use starch to thicken things, like you'd use cornstarch to thicken, or arrowroot, which is another form of starch. Or roux, of course, which is flour and butter. So good. Even if you add some cream to this, it ends up retaining that kind of golden brown color, which some people like, some people don't. I love it. That's a good start. Alright, I think we will end up using all the potatoes. Maybe. I could have let the potatoes cook just a little bit longer. They'll end up simmering down in here and we'll mash it again at the end. There are still hunks of garlic floating in here, but they won't be near as potent once everything's added. Like the chunk of garlic you get in your mouth on this is not going to be overbearing since it's already been cooked down into the broth. Probably should have eaten some before coming with Frag. Probably a good idea. Okay, so that's not near what I want as far as viscosity goes, so we'll go ahead and add the rest of the potatoes. Mash those down, and it should be just about correct. I love the texture of potatoes once they're broken down like this. It's really kind of gritty, but not sandy, just gritty. Gives it enough viscosity that you feel like the soup is thickened, but you don't have to deal with all that roux. That sweet, delicious butter. I call this the golden garlic soup. This is one variation of it. As I said before, you can thicken it with roux or heavy cream or any variety of really bad things for you. But when I cook it for myself at home, it is very basic and easy to make. Okay, we'll mash again here in a minute. You can already see it's a little bit thicker as far as viscosity goes. Once it simmers for a minute, potatoes will fully break down and actually get a little bit thicker than it is right now. Okay, turn that up a smidge. We'll cut the rest of our veggies. Go from there. All right. You can use a variety of fresh herbs in this soup. Rosemary works really good. I'm going to use thyme on this occasion because that's what I got. I love thyme. Probably my favorite herb. When you're adding fresh herbs to soup, you most of the time want to add them at the very end. Overcooked herbs have this weird flavor to them, especially in soup. So the fresher the herb is going in, the better flavor profile you're going to get. I really dislike dried thyme. It has a very woody flavor, whereas fresh thyme has a much earthier flavor. Last time we used thyme, which was 2 weeks ago, I ended up individually peeling the leaves off. For a soup, I don't care about that as much. The stems will cook down and taste good in the soup anyways. You don't want the big woody stems in the middle, but the side stems are not going to be, they're not near as hard. You can chop through them very easily. Okay, too hot. I hear it bubbling. Too much. Okay, that's good. It depends, Rokius. Dried herbs you'll usually add earlier. Fresh herbs I almost always fold into anything at the end. Especially in a soup, knowing that it's going to sit there and cool down, the flavors will infuse then rather than during the cooking process, which will provide a much more mellow flavor. That's my humble opinion. Frying your spices, that's a good way to do it to release the oils. Like if you're going to add dried herbs, I always crush them in my hands like this as much as possible. Helps release some of the oils in the herb. The fresh herbs, not near as big of a deal. We're going to add a couple more stems. Well, soup's always going to be better the day after you make it or after it cools and is reheated because the flavors have time to marry. Like the garlic's going to get in there just fine, but the subtle flavors of celery and carrots and all that stuff is going to leak into the liquid overnight or after it's cooled down more so than right during the cooking process. Everything comes together after it cools. Same goes with most sauces. They're usually better after they've sat for a minute. What did I just do? I'm all about clean, simple flavors. I love fancy food, I really do, but as a home cook, you usually just don't have the time or resources or hell money to be spending tons of money as you would in restaurant quality meals. Gonna mince this up as finely as I possibly can. Don't want any chunks of stem or big leaves in there. It's gonna be kind of an undertone to the soup. So, dear God, that knife scraping sound is my least favorite sound in the entire world. Worse than nails on a chalkboard. For me, anyways. Okay. Now we're gonna cut the red onion. I'm probably gonna use about, say, half this red onion. Actually, I have a bigger one. Let's use that one. That's a horrible cut. Okay, Okay, the order we add things is also very important for this soup. Onion cooks very quickly, celery cooks very quickly, and we want to still have some bite on everything in the soup. Otherwise, the texture isn't right. Now, we're going with texture. Not only are we having different shapes in there, we have different types of food that have different textures. Celery, of course, is crunchy. Carrots can be crunchy or mushy as well. We're also going to have a little crunch from the potato. Alright, mash it up. We're getting there. There we go. Finally got that chunk. Now, if you want a super thick, creamy soup, you're never going to achieve that flavor profile with potatoes. It's going to end up being like watery mashed potatoes in that case, which is not the point of using potatoes to thicken. Okay. It is a very nice red onion. Very good color. Okay, so there's a couple ways I can cut onions. This is for soup. I'm not going to do the additional cut this way like I did with the garlic. We're just going to go straight down. Onion kind of has natural lines anyways, so unless you need a super precise, perfect cut, you don't have to do the second cut inward beforehand, which is also the most dangerous cut you can do in an onion. I've cut myself multiple times doing that. Pretty sure all cooks have cut themselves on an onion at one point or another. These will be folded in very near the end because they're going to just carry over cook with the heat of the liquid anyways. Ooh, that is a potent onion. Holy crap. That's a burner. Get this big piece out of here. Alright. Definitely getting there on the soup. Just want to make sure all the starch in the potatoes is broken out as much as possible. So again, if you had an immersion blender, this would be done in about 2 seconds. Because you just stick it in, hit a button, and everything would be perfectly emulsified for the entire soup. Onion too strong. It doesn't really bother me anymore. My first day of culinary school, I had to fine dice 14 pounds of onions. Ever since that day, onions have never really hurt me that bad. You end up crying, but it's just a thing. Okay, we're gonna square these off because I do want cubes in this occasion. God, that was bad. Square enough. A little bit lopsided. Oh well. It's kind of intimidating to cook live because I know I'll be honest, I'm not the best cook in the world. Certainly know quite a few things. I worked in kitchens for a long time. But on that same note, don't know everything. Don't cook perfectly all the time. I'm sure Jacob can attest, even in a Michelin star restaurant, mistakes happen. Because, as with all things, human error is always prevalent. Square potato looks like butter from the internet. Sure. Seems legit. Okay, so at this time we're going to cut the potatoes. We're going to add the potatoes and the carrots. So we're going to add the carrots now, cut the potatoes, add the potatoes, then we'll add the celery, and then shortly after add the thyme and onion. Then we'll let it simmer for just a second, adjust the seasoning level, and then it's done. That's right, I'm teaching you guys how to live more than anything. As the thing with like the Food Network and stuff, I mean, I've worked with some extremely talented cooks in my time, and everybody messes up on a daily basis. Most of the time. Very rare you have a day where you don't have something and you're like, man, I could have done that a lot better. Alright, so we're going to cut all these into little strips. Come on, potato. Cut myself doing that before, too. Alright, so we'll stack these up the best we can. The best thing you can do is have a little, if you want perfect cuts, is have a wet rag or a little thing of water next to you so you can wipe your knife off after the cuts. So as soon as starch builds up on the knife, the potatoes will stick and pull out like they just did. That noise. Oh god, that onion is so strong. Make my nose run. Alright, potatoes. Get all that starch off the knife. Alright, we'll taste the carrot. Just want them to barely start cooking. And they have. Add our diced potatoes. And celery shortly afterwards. Cooking is a lot of timing, more than anything. So timing is extremely important. The order things cook in is how texture is developed. If you add something at the wrong time, it becomes mushy, and then the texture of whatever you're adding becomes irrelevant. Because everything becomes mushy eventually. So if you add something too soon, it will become mushy and then lose the point. You'll still get the flavor, but the texture's gone. Oh, sweet nectar. All right, I'm going to give this one more taste to see how the garlic and salt levels are. We're not going to be adding anything else major that will affect the saltiness or anything else of the soup, so whatever the broth is at right now, we'll season accordingly. Just a smidge of salt and pepper, and it's really there. This is all the salt and pepper I've added outside of the stock, which has sodium in it. That's all it is. This is incredibly simple. All we did was brown garlic, add stock, add cooked potatoes, and then the rest of our vegetables. And that's it. Incredibly healthy and tasty. Okay, we'll add the celery now. The idea when I cook anything, basically, is to have the vegetables still have some crunch to them when they're done cooking. So we're assuming this soup's going to cool down and then heat back up. So having stuff a little bit undercooked is not necessarily a bad thing. What's the one key to tasty soup? Like this soup, it's the garlic. If you don't brown the garlic properly, you're screwed. That's where all the base flavor is. The undertone of the entire soup is that golden garlic, which is why it's called golden garlic soup. Anything you cook simple, usually the initial searing or browning process on whatever you're doing is the most important. Why does your wooden spatula have a hole in it? That's a good question. I would assume the wooden spatula has a hole in it for stirring liquid so it passes through the liquid easier with less resistance. But F if I know. That's my assumption. For the record, I managed to burn popcorn last night. Ouch. Alright, so we're going to try to get one with the carrots, maybe a potato in here. That'd be nice. Where's my potatoes at, man? There's a potato. Get a carrot in there. Ah, missed it. Come on, man. Don't do me like that. Alright, carrots are just about perfect, so we're going to add the onion and the thyme. Do one more taste and seasoning, and we'll be done. After it sits and cools down, all the flavors will marry. It'll be even tastier tomorrow. Should have grabbed my bench knife. That's what I should have done. A little bit of thyme goes a long way. It's a very powerful flavor. You can very easily overdo it. You'll know if you underdid it, but you'll definitely know if you overdid it. I was going to go ahead and say that needs more red onion, so we're going to cut the other half here. I am using chicken broth, but you can very easily do this with vegetable broth. It's still very tasty. The onion's probably the one thing in here that won't really matter if it's more or less raw when it's done, so adding in a little bit more at the end is not going to be a big deal. In fact, raw onion diced finely is an amazing flavor. Use that for something else later. Now, if you want to make it look nicer, than it is, you can add like fresh parsley or some other green. Thickening it with cream as well will add a nice, really nice golden flavor or look to it. It'll taste about the same, maybe a little more rounded with cream in there. But really, the only fat that's in this is about a tablespoon and a half of olive oil. So you don't get much healthier as far as soup goes. Alright, let's give it one more taste. Oh yeah, it looks nice. A little bit of everything on there. Need salt. Salt. Almost every soup I do, I add a little bit of Tabasco too. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Not much, just a bit, not even enough to give it spice. Especially cream-based soups. Tabasco's your secret friend. Tabasco's a great rounder for a lot of flavor profiles. Sriracha, you guilty pleasure, you can do that too. All right, I think once that sits, going to be amazing. We're going to turn it off now. All the veggies are cooked. I'm going to add another about 3 sprigs of thyme, and then we're going to be done. How did I do, Jager? How did I do? For being a dirty casual. The one part I love about peeling thyme is your fingers smell like thyme for about 2 days. I love the smell. Filthy casual. But I always recommend, especially if you're starting to cook, start very simple. Do stuff like this, and then work your way into. Oh, I'm not intimidated. I'm not intimidated. I'm a little bit intimidated. I know there's lots of good cooks on the channel. There's lots of line cooks and chefs and people that work at very nice establishments. But I recommend people start small, go big. You have to learn basic flavor profiles in order to stack things on top of that. If you don't know how to do the basics, if you don't know what garlic and thyme taste like by themselves, you'll never be able to add a good flavor profile outside of that. All right, so that is done. It's like honestly one of the easiest soups I know how to make, which is one of the reasons I did it here. I know that a lot of people that watch the show don't cook for themselves or are scared to cook for themselves. I encourage you to get in the kitchen and cook something for yourself. It's a very rewarding feeling when it turns out well, and you're going to learn something every time you cook. Mistakes happen in the kitchen. I mess up stuff all the time. It doesn't mean your food's ruined. It just means you learned a lesson for next time and can cook it even better. We'll use this later. Alright, so that's that. That is golden garlic soup. Can we get a close-up of the soup? Here, I'll show you on a spoon, actually. The texture looks like it's pretty watery, but it does have a little bit of viscosity to it, a little bit of that potato texture. You can see on the spoon here, I hope, if you run your finger down it. It still has some of that starchy texture, and it doesn't run from side to side. That is freaking delicious. I'm going to eat a giant bowl of that before I start the next portion of the cast. I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to start the cast. We're doing 80% of Meat Boy for my first time. I need to get my time down to around 20 minutes. Between 20 and 23 is what I'm shooting for. So today is the first day of practice. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. You can see the ingredients right here. We had garlic, yellow potatoes, celery, carrots, red onion, thyme, olive oil, salt, and pepper. Probably went through 4 or 5 spoons. Tasting your food is the best thing you can do. Taste every single thing you add. Taste it again. Keep tasting it, because that's the way you're going to get the best flavor. Oh yes, chicken stock, which you can use veg stock as well. This would be a perfect example of something to do, Hex Mr. Voodoo, as a start. How many servings is that? That's probably... To give you a reference point, this would be a large portion. This would be like a meal portion for me. It's probably 5 of those full. It's also a very cheap soup. That's one American serving. America. Alright guys, I will be back in about 2 minutes. Just going to run downstairs and load up the stream. Thank you everybody for watching today. I hope that was educational for you. We'll be back in just a minute.